I am Lewis Pope. I'm the head security nerd at Enable. I was formerly I started out in IT as freelance PC repair, but I eventually found my way to a little break fix shop that I eventually helped grow into an MSP over 6 years. After that, I came to Enable as a sales engineer, and now as the head security nerd. I'm SSCP certified, System Security Certified Practitioner. I'm working on my CISSP. This is where I eat, sleep, and breathe. So I'm going to be, whenever I talk about things, usually I'm talking about it in the broader sense, not just the thing you can do with our solution. So don't hesitate to ask those bigger, broader questions today. So quick, what is the security office hours for all of the new people? It's a monthly session focused on security. It happens every Thursday after Patch Tuesday on purpose. We review Microsoft patches, anything that's of note, any significant out-of-band updates from Microsoft, any recent security news that's worthwhile. I will also be discussing any new or upcoming security features that are in our products, any new cookbook items that are relevant. And if you've never have not seen the automation cookbook, we'll be introducing you to that today, and that'll be a valuable resource for you. That's where we have automations that we've created and partners have created and decided to share with the community. And then we'll have the Q&A on the end. And all of this is hopefully so in the end of it, we can make make your operations more secure and or efficient. So first, we're going to start out with security news. And this one is some people are going to know about this. Some people are not going to have any idea about this. And for a lot of people, it's not even going to matter. But for the people that this will matter for, it's really going to matter. So Hikvision, they produce, manufacture, and sell a lot of security cameras, IP-based security cameras and DVRs and NVRs. Well, they have a vulnerability for their cameras that permits an attacker to gain full control of the device without authentication over the internet. There's 100 million plus devices that are affected. It'll allow for data exfiltration from a network or further network compromise because they have full control over that device once they've used this vulnerability. So this is not a small isolated thing. Hikvision does a lot of white label rebranding of security cameras. So if anybody here does, as part of your services, you're installing these security cameras, make sure that it's not HIK rebrands, and if they are, make sure you're getting out there and applying updates for the firmware to mitigate this, because this is one of those, and this is about as bad as the Exchange Hafnium attacks and proxy logon, because it gives somebody, in the sense that it gives an attacker that level of access to an environment whenever that vulnerability is leveraged. So if you're using these, that's just another good reason why IoT devices, security cameras, wireless thermostats, anything of that nature should be on isolated networks separated from production. There is no good reason why these types of devices, things that you cannot manage, things that you cannot put any type of protection on or add any additional security measures to, they're just basically, you have to take it out of the box, put it on the network, and assume the vendor or the manufacturer put good security into it. There's just no reason whatsoever, again, for this to be in production environment. So whenever you're brought in to do these types of things, whenever somebody says, hey, I bought this $30 camera off of Amazon, can you install it for me? Yes, I can, but I have to put it on a separate network for security reasons. And if I can't put it on a separate network for security reasons, and they're a business, well, that's whenever you have to have that risk acceptance conversation and get them to sign off on it, that they accept the risk. It's not, you informed them, told them it was a bad idea. They insisted, all right, I'll do it for you. I'll take the money, but you're going to sign off on it saying that, you did it against my recommendation. We also have the Windows 11 launched on the 5th, I believe, officially, and just a neat little thing that's popped up on what's been causing some of the compatibility holes. So whenever the Windows 11 upgrade process starts, or whenever you use the compatibility tool to check the compatibility for the upgrade, one of the things that we'll put a hold on now is if an application has non-ASCII character entries in the registry. Right now, it's only affecting a small number of applications, but it's worth knowing that this can happen, that you cannot upgrade a Windows 10 machine to Windows 11 if a piece of software stuck a non-ASCII character in a registry entry. Microsoft is working on a solution for this for known good software that does this, but I believe ostensibly in the beginning this was done to improve security by preventing obfuscation of malicious content in the registry, to keep malware and attackers from putting entries in non-ASCII characters in the registry in order to obfuscate their malicious intent and prevent it from being detected by a security solution. This is just kind of a little pull of the curtain back a little bit, just to say, oh, okay, yeah, Microsoft has made some substantial changes to Windows 11 to improve security. It's not just lip service. Something else I want to bring up is the Security Resource Center. So this is a new resource center that we launched a few days ago, maybe a week and a half ago. And this is just a location for you to go and get whatever our current messaging is, as well as going and finding our white papers and other security related stuff that we have out and available. There is a message from our chief security officer there that's worth watching, and also encouraging feedback there. So there is a little survey there about, check security. What security topics are you interested in? Did we get to see this ourselves on my team? It's part of what am I going to work on in the future? What do our partners say they need assistance with? And just a, little spoiler so far, MSP internal security has been the #1 ask so far. And that kind of, tracks with, my other interactions with our partners. Everybody knows that security is important. We have spent many, many years in the MSP space with availability, uptime, and recovery being our core things, the things we sold on, the things that the whole business was built around. But now that focus is shifting more and more to, those are all the givens. Those are the things you're supposed to be doing anyway as an MSP. That's not special. Security is special now. And that's just reflecting that new fact of life for us all. But the Security Resource Center, just a quick peek. And there's the video and the survey. There is going to be a feed of all of our security blogs and contents as they come out. And here's my Patch Tuesday blog from yesterday. And then further down, there will be ebooks and white papers available for anything else we have. And also, the upcoming security events that we're going to be doing. So if you want anything that, has the word security or cybersecurity slapped in front of it, you're probably going to be able to find it here on the new security resources page. And down at the very, very bottom is our security statement. As well, everybody's got to have a security statement. And this goes through all of our, what is our stance on internal security, personal security, physical and environmental? What kind of controls do we have in place, auditing, everything like that. Now on to actual, Patch Tuesday. What came out? No, that should be October Patch Tuesday. Oh man, I am not changing these names the way I should. All right, so the October Patch Tuesday was 74 total vulnerabilities being addressed. 3 of them were rated as critical. 1 of them is rated as active exploitation. 4 of them were 0 days. So those were ones where they were already out and about and announced before they had a patch available for them. So there are some that are going to be a little bit higher on the list this month to make sure you're getting it patched and updated against. Another thing I like to do, and anybody that's been here before, you'll know what this is. For anybody new, I like pointing out that even though there are only 74 vulnerabilities that were being addressed by Microsoft in Patch Tuesday, whenever you break it down and look at how many individual, the pairings of a patch for a version of an OS. So 1904 will need specific patch for Word. 21H2 or 20H2, it might need a different patch for its Word, or it might need the same. And once you start figuring out all those different permutations of patches that would be needed to address all those vulnerabilities, you get to 1,608 different combinations this month. Patch management and the tools that we use to do patch management makes this fairly trivial for us. We, as system engineers and technicians, we don't have to go out and figure out which patch belongs to which system and manually go through that process. When a WSUS or patch management inside of RMM or N-Central is already handling that for us. But don't trivialize what's happening because the tool is making it easy for you. That's one of the ways that a lot of people in the MSP space undersell themselves. They figure out a really neat, efficient way of handling something, and because it's so easy and simple, they undersell the value of it. So don't undersell the value of patch management. If you got to have that conversation with clients, with prospects, change the conversation. It is not just patch management. It is part of your vulnerability remediation and mitigation services. And having this as, this is what we go through, this is what we filter through for you to make sure that these patches are applied and in place like they should be. Well, it's impressive if you tell somebody last month there was 1,608 different patches that could have possibly been applied to your systems, and we got to figure that out for every system you got. But don't worry, we still take care of that for a reasonable price. So for individual patches to actually vulnerabilities to focus on, I've got this list in the handout, so make sure you get the handout. What I do with this prioritization table is I'm listing any vulnerability that has a severity rating of critical or is marked as exploitation detected or exploitation more likely. And that's because you cannot just rely on the severity rating of a vulnerability or a patch to determine, how quickly you should be applying it. Because you can have a vulnerability marked as critical, but as it is here, all three of the criticals are marked as exploitation less likely. So that means in a temporal sense, in a scale of time, it's less likely for somebody to leverage that vulnerability versus all of the important ones that are all marked as exploitation more likely and one marked as exploitation detected. That temporal sense of it's more likely that these will be leveraged in attacks makes them as just as important or more important sometimes to get them patched and fixed versus the relying just on the severity levels. And three of those that I want to call out specifically are these three CVEs. So there's the Win32 elevation of privilege. This is the one that's under active exploitation. It is involved right now actively in a mystery Snell rat campaign. It is probably going to continue because once one APT group has a successful campaign, others will take note and they will leverage their techniques themselves. So this is going to be something that will get quite a bit of use here soon. There is also a new Exchange server remote code execution vulnerability. It is marked as exploitation more likely, and this could become a part of a new proxy logon type attack. So anybody that is that is managing on-site Exchange servers, you should probably be treating getting those Exchange servers updated and patched against this vulnerability, treat it just as important just as urgent as it was 3 months ago, 4 months ago, whenever we were dealing with proxy logon. The third one is a Windows print spooler spoofing vulnerability. This one's also marked as exploitation more likely. And again, it could become part of a new print nightmare type attack. So print nightmare was a headache from June, July, August. Supposedly they finally sorted it out for us in September, and everybody was, trying to figure out how to contend with this. This could possibly be another vulnerability of that level. It just needs to be strung together with another vulnerability, and somebody can do lots of massive damage with it. So this is another one. You're going to want to make sure it's getting vulnerabilities applied, vulnerabilities patched on these three. If you've got to choose three, these are the three to choose and prioritize. Something I don't usually talk about is a lot of third-party stuff. I usually focus on the Microsoft stuff, but worth noting this month is the Apache Foundation. They had an incomplete patch that was applied in their HTTP servers, 2.4.50. There's are active attacks right now. There are APT groups and cyber criminal gangs that are actively scanning the internet right now, looking for these Apache web servers that are running the susceptible versions. Not everybody is going to be dealing with managing Apache servers, but if you are, this should be priority number one for you right now, is getting out and making sure that any exposed, publicly exposed Apache web servers are getting updated to the new version 2.4.51, because this is potentially one of those vulnerability combos of an attacker using both of these. They can do pretty much whatever they want to the web server. For cumulative updates, nothing too special. There are regular roll-ups of security updates for 21H1, 20H2, 2004, and 1909 Windows 10 builds. There was a notable bug fix for Outlook freezing, and well as a weird bug fix for apps not allowing keyboard input whenever you had the taskbar, the Windows taskbar dragged to somewhere other than the bottom of the screen. Another reminder, Windows 10 2004 is end of service on December 14th. So if that's what you've put your version hold at for your environments, you need to plan to get rid of that version hold and upgrade by December or before December. And of course, Windows 11 was released on the 5th. The patch management engine inside of RMM and N-central can handle the Windows 11 upgrade. We've tested it, but for at the moment, and it can change it any day. That's why it's important to watch the release notes and make sure you're subscribed to those. As of right now, with RMM, the feature upgrade to 11 is auto blocked at the moment. It's set to manual, so it's not going to automatically apply. You have to go in, find it, and approve it yourself through the patch management workflow or individual machine. So that should make it a little bit easier on everybody that is worried about, well, I don't want Windows 11 randomly being pushed out in my environments, and then I've got to deal with uncompatible software or end user complaints and so on. The N-central also has that ability. Two questions here I'm going to read through. And if a customer has their services and software on the cloud, what type of cybersecurity can you offer them? So this is one of those I don't want to say a false. There's this assumption sometimes with partners, with clients, with MSPs themselves, that once you move a service out into the cloud and you move all of the work of the business out into web portals and cloud services, well, you don't have to worry about security anymore. Nope. There are still computers that have to be used in order to gain access to those services. And that access can be abused by attackers. So on the point of the workstations that an end user actually has to interact with, it does not matter if they're keeping everything in the cloud or they're doing everything locally on a local server. You need, there will be a just different risk assessment that has to be done. But in the end, you're still going to be doing a lot of the exact same things. You're still going to be saying everybody needs to have multi-factor authentication set up for everything you're going to access over the internet. So your M365 account, your web portal for your line of business software, all of that's going to be MFA. So that's not going to change in either situation. The endpoints are also going to need constant updating and patching. So that's going to need to happen. You're still going to have to do a next gen AV of some sort, whether that's an EDR solution from us, Sophos Intercept X, whatever. You're still going to need that there, because if that system, that workstation that nobody can, again, nothing happens locally on it, they're still going to those web portals. Well, if that machine gets hit with a targeted attack, well, that attacker has now scraped all the passwords from that workstation, or that attacker has pulled other information from those active sessions that they were logged into, and it just goes on and on and on. Now, how do you protect what is actually out in the cloud is another question. That's well, what kind of cloud is it? Is it you and you control it? Or is it just a web portal, a service that you've bought, the client's bought access to, and nobody really has a handle on it? Well, if it is a cloud or web service that somebody has bought into and nobody has any real control over it, that's all on the vendor, then the most you can do is make sure, all right, everybody's trained on proper use, everybody has multi-factor authentication set up, and if we have availability of setting permissions for users, we're going to follow the principle of least privilege for assigning out permissions. Business, the lowest person on the totem does not need access to everything, and there are many cases where even the highest person on the totem does not need access to everything. And if it's cloud infrastructure that you control, that goes down a rabbit hole real quick, because, all right, well, what is it on? Is it on AWS? Is it on Azure? Are you going to do your permission auditing manually, or are you going to automate your permission auditing? You also need to be able to monitor for logins, events that occur. You have to be alerted whenever logins fail, or whenever logins come from unexpected geographies, those types of things. So short answer is, you should not treat a client's environment differently as far as their endpoints go and what you do to secure those endpoints. You should not treat that any differently with a client that has everything local than a client that has everything in the cloud. Another question: what is the actual downside when the Windows 10 2004 reaches end of life, besides receiving updates? Well, they're not going to any longer receive the cumulative updates. So that means you're now down to, all right, we have to rely on Microsoft to release specific security updates for that build, which, if it is a bad enough vulnerability, Microsoft will go do that. They do that all the time. From the business efficiency side of things, it makes your life harder to have end of life Windows versions out there, because you're not getting the convenient and easy cumulative updates that you can just say, oh, the cumulative update has been applied, therefore all the other security fixes are in place and I don't have to futz with it too much. There's also just the fact that, is now an end of life solution. Microsoft is not going to give it the same amount of care and attention anymore. So that's another thing. And then also, there's always reasons why you might have to be stuck at a specific build. It is notorious that we still have clients out there that are still running Windows XP systems that have been, long since virtualized and are on VMs for emergency purposes, because we still have this antiquated software that has to be used to read certain data sets so that we can, get to them whenever we need them. Those rare edge cases are always going to happen. They're going to continue to happen. You're going to need a specific version of software, a specific version of OS in order for it to work right. Whenever those types of things start to happen, though, the best thing to do is pull those systems out of production, isolate them somewhere else on another network, because they are a threat to the rest of the production environment. It's a statistically small threat sometimes, but it is a threat and it is quantifiable. And if your goal is to, remember, if your goal as the MSP, as the IT and security professional that's sauntering into the room, it is your role to say this is bad practice. Now, the quantity of it being a bad practice, well, that's up to you based on how aggressive do you want to be on this project pitch that you're going with. But you still should have the confidence to say it is not good practice. It should be updated. Boo Microsoft for making us have to upgrade whatever, but still best practice is to get up to currently supported versions. And also, depending on what security framework you're following, or if you have to adhere to NIST 853 or 171 standards, it is a requirement. You cannot run end-of-life software. It is a giant no-no. So if anybody here is worried about the CMMC compliance, if that's something you want to pursue in the future, or you've got clients that are going to have to worry with it once that final deadline arrives for it, that is a giant that's a very, very hard line in the sand for that. You cannot run end-of-life software, period. And another question, setting up MFA for workstations whenever they are accessing services hosted in the cloud. There are multiple tools. You could always go the Microsoft Azure route and use Azure AD and use those solutions to set up some MFA. There's another federated service out there. There are third-party solutions to make that happen so you can have MFA login with Windows. But Azure AD, if you have not looked into Azure AD yet, I would go look at it first before going out and looking for a third-party solution somewhere to make that happen. They're still going to, of course, their line of business software, their web portals, or anything else they're going to be logging into with MFA. Well, they've got the MFA part handled. You just have to choose the authenticator app that's going to be used. Reported Patch Tuesday issue. So there has not been any major Patch Tuesday issues that I am aware of at this moment. If you're not following out the Patch Tuesday mega thread that's out on Reddit, it is a great source to see if there is a problem happening with Patch Tuesday patches. This is probably one of the places that's going to get reported at first. Security tools. So this is something new that I've been adding into the discussions. Last week I introduced Kali Linux as a penetration testing platform. So if you want to do red team or pen testing or vulnerability assessments as part of your service offerings, and you need where do I start? I don't want to spend money on this. I want to learn it. Then the Kali Linux distro is a great place to start. This month, we're talking about rubber duckies real quick. And for anybody that no familiarity with it, rubber ducky is a USB key that whenever you plug it into a device, the computer detects it as a keyboard. It doesn't detect it as a mass storage device. And there is memory and a processor on that USB key. So whenever it is inserted into a computer, it can start running keystroke injection attacks. So it's able to actually issue commands to that computer and make it do things. There are open source and pre-built versions of these. So you can go off and you can buy one that's already built for you for anywhere between 35 and 70 bucks. There's multiple flavors from different vendors. Of course, avoid non-reputable sites for obvious reasons on this. They are great for cybersecurity awareness training. Get one of these little guys, outfit it with the commands that you want it to have, and drop it somewhere near a business, near a client in their environments, and see if they plug it in. Have it so it writes a registry key value silently to their computer, and then use RMM or N-Central to look for that registry key, to look for when it shows up. That way, whenever it shows up, you're able to just pick up the phone and call them within 15 minutes of them picking up this strange, weird USB key they've never seen and plugged it into a company resource. That is a security faux pas. That is not something you're supposed to do. That is a big liability. All kinds of things can happen because of that. So Is that a common attack? No, it's not a common attack. Is it one that exists? Yes, it exists. Should you be worried with it? Well, this is why in a lot of security standards and compliances, it says you have to disable auto run as well as disabling auto mount of external storage devices. With RMM and Essential, if you're using EDR, that has that function built right into it. You can go use the device control to block external USB mass storage drives across the board based on the class, and then you can go back and you can block on and then allow on specific serial IDs. You could do the same thing with human interface devices here. So what would I do to prevent attacks like this from happening in my environment? So you can't prevent an end user from picking it up and putting it in unless you're going to stick hot glue in all their USB ports. But that's not tenable, that's not feasible. So the really only good way of doing it is to use something like Azure AD, Intune, something that can, or a group policy, or EDR inside of RMM and Essential to say, all right, we're going to block all human interface devices. We're going to block all, in this case, we're going to block keyboards. Well, okay, I blocked the keyboard. How am I supposed to use it? A keyboard? Well, you don't. So that's why you have to block keyboards and add a rule that allows specific keyboards based on serial ID. Some clients and partners will think that's overly aggressive. Some of them will appreciate it. Some of them will not like the idea that you get to dictate to them the keyboards and the mice that they're using with their computers. But again, your role as the security person, the professional in the room, is to walk in and say, this is best practice. I am making you aware of this. It can happen. Is it that big of a deal for your environments? Yes, no, based on the sensitivity of their data. If it's a client, my threshold has always been if it's a client that has an environment and if they have a computer that is down for an hour and they're losing hundreds to thousands of dollars an hour because that computer is down, then this is a no question. We are going to do this. We will figure out a way to make it palatable for you, but we are going to do this. We are going to block any old random USB device from being plugged into your computers. It is only going to be pre-approved devices. For the cookbook, so anybody that first time around, the cookbook is on the Enable website. So you're able to get to it, the success.in-able, and it's going to be underneath resources, automation cookbook. And this is where, again, the head nerds, the sales engineers on our side, as well as our partners who have made their own automation tasks and scripts and are, uploading it for the rest of the community to take care of. These are all types of tasks and monitors and checks that you can add to your RMM or Essential. We've got one in here for disabling RDP, enabling smart screen on devices. We have ones that are mitigations for specific CVEs if there are applicable mitigations for them. And the ones to point out, what I want to point out for this month is we have a ton of new Mac specific automation. So if you are a Mac shop or you have clients that are using Macs, we have a ton of new Mac specific tasks and checks in here. And that is just a part of our expanding efforts on being able to manage Macs better. If you're using RMM, that's more tangible recently because they added Apple profiles and Apple certificates in there, so you can enroll Apple devices into MDM management and then use Apple profile configurators to create a Apple profile and then apply that profile to that Mac, to that iOS device, whatever the target is. There's also a new one in here to disable Windows Hello, and another one for setting the inactivity timeout seconds entry to 10 minutes. That way your screen will lock after 10 minutes of inactivity. This is a Now, this is a pretty standard security measure. Again, you will have people that complain about the fact that they got up from their computer, walked around, talked to the office, come back, and they've got to go through the trouble of logging back into their computer again. Well, that's kind of one of those, well, tough. And that's the way it needs to be. So, but the cookbook is a resource of a lot of things. If you get into a situation and you've got to figure out, well, I need to be able to do this, and I would like to be able to do it or make this action, make this change, monitor for this item through RMM or N-central, come in here and check out to see if we haven't already done that for you. If you don't find it in here, well, you can still do it. That's what the automation manager is for, and also the fact that we will happily let you run PowerShell scripts through RMM or N-central with your endpoints as targets. And if you've got a interest in that, and that is a skill gap for you, go check out the boot camps and find the automation boot camps for your respective platform. Be worthwhile attending. So we're getting down to the last quarter of the hour, and one thing I want to bring up is we have the partner advisory groups. Specifically, we have the security partner advisory group coming up for RMM and N-central in a few, actually just a week or two. If you would like to be included in that conversation, this is going to be a presentation with our chief security officer, the product managers, a few other executive level people may be there. Make sure that if you want to attend this, throw that in the questions and let me know if you want to attend the security pack for N-central or the security pack for RMM. The format's going to be, the first half is going to be everybody talking about what we've done so far, what we're doing in the future, what the current roadmap items are, and it'll also give you your opportunity to give direct feedback to multiple decision makers in the same room at the same time. Now, no guarantees on that, but we will be asking questions, and we do want to get feedback because this is your opportunity to have your voice heard the loudest. So again, make sure you throw that into the questions section. That way I can get you included on that and get an invite out to you. Good question. So once you start getting into Azure and Azure AD, it's just like with domains. There are going to be some requirements. It's not going to be Windows 10 Home that you're going to be joining to Azure AD. And once you join it to Azure AD, once you're joined to it, well, it's just like with joining it to a domain. You now are managing that endpoint and have lots of control over it. So there's always, again, the back and forth between how much control is a client willing to afford you over their equipment. Is it bring your own device? How do you address that? Multiple questions go in that. But with Azure AD, just go into it thinking basically I'm creating some type of a domain at this point. Okay, all right. So what would be the best solution for protecting a network besides endpoint protection? So you will always hear the defense in depth or the layered security approach brought up as being part of what you should be doing. But abstracting it into, it's a great way to think about it and simply visualize it, but there's always going to be holes if you go with just a layered approach because, well, I put something on a single layer, therefore that layer is protected. Well, you could have put two things on a single layer and protected it even better, but was it worthwhile? I would say, though, as a first step for things to go look for is you want endpoint protection on the endpoints themselves. You're going to want a firewall appliance in place and not just we turned it on and we didn't configure anything, and actually properly configured and licensed firewall appliance of some sorts. And also if the environment can afford it, an IDS or an IPS solution of some sort. And Fortinet, Meraki has these, pfSense has these. You can also take the route of going out and bringing Suricata or Snort-like capabilities into an environment. And at those points, it's not about protection, it's about monitoring and response so that you're able to pick up on that malicious activity that's happening on the network that your endpoint protection is not picking up There's always the risk assessment conversation of how much, what is the security budget? What should we be, what can the client afford? What does the environment need? You have to make that good balance there. But it should not stop at just an endpoint protection solution. Something needs to be done for the network as well. And then you also need to be able to say, it doesn't matter if your entire business burns down, it's fine. All of your mission critical data and your mission critical system backups were automatically offsite anyway. So you have to be able to build in that resilience as well. And that's something some MSPs will, I don't want to say dodge it intentionally, but they don't get around to it or they don't approach it because, well, they're so busy saying, well, we're going to do all these things so you don't have these problems. The downside is that you really have no control whatsoever over one day an attacker finding an undocumented vulnerability and leveraging it to completely decimate an environment. You cannot stop that possibility no matter what you do. So you have to be able to recover from that type of scenario. So it's important to have those recovery, the business continuity and the disaster recovery plans well defined in place, and that partners understand that you're going to be, understand the concepts of it, and that if this happens, it means you will be down X amount of hours, X amount of days. That's a good one. I don't have any available that we're issuing right now for incident response templates. It is something that's on the horizon for us. We'll be having it, just not now. A one-pager executive brief on info security awareness for board members, for the decision makers that you have to convince that it's important. They don't, have the capacity to understand it. Well, that's just a problem. C-levels and decision makers most of the time are not going to have the capacity to understand the technical aspects of security. It is not going to happen, and there is no one pager in the world that is going to fix that for you. There's no magic formula for that. The way to fix that is you have to address it in the business sense. You have to go in and understand their business well enough so that you're able to take and say, well, I know what would happen if this happens technically. Let me translate that into the business and impact and the specific business impact for that company. If you can walk into a board meeting to have a sit down with the president or the C-suite, and you can tell them, if this one computer went down, it will mean this employee can't work, this employee can't work, and these other people can't do what they need to do either. And your productivity is going to drop 50% for as long as that computer is non-available and not running. That's what you have to have the conversation. Now we do have some one sheet, some one page stuff that's available in the MSP Institute, also in the Market Builder. This is another thing that not everybody knows that we have. We have the Market Builder. If you do not have access to Market Builder, get access to Market Builder. Go talk to your partner success manager, register, get logged in. This gives you the capability of doing, it is a marketing platform. It is not just a repository of a bunch of PDF files. You can actually use this to design, implement, and send out email and marketing campaigns. So if you do not have this, get it. We're giving it to you for free. Why not use it? But there are some good one pagers in this. But again, I would use that one pager as supplemental to the business conversation you're going to have instead. Okay, so here's a good, so can a standalone Windows 10 be registered with multiple 2FA devices, so multiple authentication apps? Yes, it can be registered for multiple authentication apps, but my pivot on this is going to be if the person goes on vacation and the other person uses the login with the vacation user's password. That's a hard no. That should never happen. One user should never be logging in with another user's password. They need their own logins. They need their own accounts. Does that add some complication? Does that add some unexpected expenses sometimes for an extra license for something? Yes, it does. But you're introducing so many failure points into your security by doing that. You can no longer at that point say who did something. Something happens, you trace it back to a specific login, which person did it. One person going to say the other person did it, the other person's going to say the other person did it, and in reality, it was really the third person who they forgot they gave or shared the access with too. So I always say it doesn't matter why, what, or what it's going to cost. Everybody needs an individual, independent logon for everything with their own MFA setup, because otherwise you've lost the control. You've lost part of the purpose of user verification. You are who you say you are, and you have permission to see or do these specific things. So, yeah, I mean, and Leopold did bring up, it's bad practice to share it. But if you get into a situation where you are forced to have to set it up that way, yes, they can have multiple 2FA applications set up for it so it can be used. So, each person can, have the authenticator app on their smartphone. But again, bad practice, not a good idea. And if you are forced to do it, then there needs to be a risk acceptance letter on file that said, I, as the security professional in the room, said you should not do this. You overrode me as the business owner. We're putting it on paper. And sometimes just putting your foot down on it and, taking the time to go through that process is enough to get the person on the other side to realize, oh, this must really be a concern if you're being that serious about this. Yes, I am. That's a professional transition change for a lot of people in the MSP space that some make, some don't. For the most part, the people that get into the MSP space, we're helpful. We like to fix things. We love the challenge. We love being set here, make these things work together, and we thrive off of, we get a thrill out of making that happen. And we don't step back and say, based on our experience, our knowledge, that no, you should not be doing this. We don't usually have I don't want to say we don't have the backbone or the cojones for it, but sometimes we're too paranoid about damaging a relationship to be stern with somebody. And that is a skill you have to develop over time. You have to learn how to be stern, how to put your foot down, but doing in that loving, authoritative figure type way, not in the mean, the mean teacher that would wrap you across the knuckles with a ruler type of way. We've hit the end of the hour. It looks like we've got all of the questions answered. I'll get everybody that wanted to be included on the PAG. I'll get your email addresses added out to the invites, and you should be getting those soon. It's been a pleasure. If anybody's got any additional questions or you want to touch base and have further conversations on anything, my email address and contact information is down on the handout for the day. You will probably do best to send me, you'll probably do best to reach out to me through Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm usually on there a lot more, but you can also find me on Facebook and also out on Twitch. Every once in a while, I'll be over there doing some live coding or some lab exercises. All right, everybody, it's been a pleasure. Make sure you got yourself registered for the next office hours. Anybody else on your teams you want to bring in, bring them in. Even if you have clients, you have prospects, and you want them to kind of, get this experience of, what we're talking about. Now, I don't, if I talk business, it's just a little bit of business talk. I'm mostly talking about security most of the time, and the justifications and the reasons and whys. So if you got clients that you would want to also hear this, feel free, drag them in, get them registered so they can attend as well. All right, everybody. Again, it's been a pleasure, and we'll see you next month or for any of the future boot camps or the PAGs that are coming up.